What'd you say to those people is the first part? And the second is like, what have you learned about the city now that you're a commissioner? Like, what, being on the inside, I'm sure you get to be in rooms and meetings and around things you just weren't able to be around before. Like, what has that been like?
So the first thing is, as an organizer, I know that the best strategy is an inside-outside strategy, right? You must have people outside pushing, but you actually have to have somebody inside willing to like listen and make the change happen, right? And so you have to have both. You have to have willing politicians that are saying, hey, you know, my people are making me do this. This has to happen, right? Because my people are demanding it, right? But you also have to have an organized opposition that's constantly on message and saying very clearly that public servants work for the public, and the public has an interest in making sure public servants do the job they were hired to do, right? That's absolutely what has to happen, and one can't happen without the other, right? They've got to be in sync. Now, what I've learned inside City Hall is it takes forever to do anything in City Hall, right? I mean, as an organizer, right, you get a good idea, right? You get a group of people together, right? You say, hey, well, what do you think, right? Everybody takes a piece, and off you go, right? Oh my gosh, it's like, I have more gray hair now than I did 7 weeks ago. Right?
Why did it take so long? What's going on at City Hall?
You know, what I have finally come to the conclusion is that City Hall operates in a constant state of fear.
Afraid of what?
Everything. Okay. They're fearful of making a decision because it could be wrong. And whether you're talking about director level or commissioners, right? Because there are repercussions for making the wrong decision.
Bless you, by the way.
Bless you, yes. But here's what I've learned. It's like, I'm old and I make mistakes, right? And if I make a mistake, I just say, oh, my bad, I'm sorry, I didn't know, right? We have to just accept the fact that no human is perfect, and we will all make mistakes. But what's missing is just that willingness to say, well, let's just try this. Maybe it'll work, maybe not. But if we don't try it, then we continue to do what we've always done and just moan about why things haven't changed.
Boom. What are people calling you about?
Oh, everything. What are people calling me about? So most of the time, people call about something that they know is pressing on the city council agenda, is coming up, right? So it's everything from, we have something called the Infill Project that's going to be coming to City Hall soon. And there's a real mix of opinions. And here's what this means in plain language, right? What it means is we have 45,000 people that moved to the Portland metro area over the last 3 years. We expect another 45,000 this year and into the near future, right? And we don't have room for all those people, right? So we have to change neighborhoods, right? We have to build up. We have to build more housing. And we have to build housing at every income level in every neighborhood, right? Your income should not determine your zip code, right? And today it does, right? And so we have communities losing their mind because they think their neighborhood is gonna, all of a sudden it's gonna be radically different, right? Well, it is, right? That's the bad news and good news, right? The good news, though, is that we have the opportunity to work cooperatively to make it the kind of neighborhood we want it to be, right? Right? And so we can't just say, we can't build a wall, right? No walls, right? And so we have to just say, okay, we're gonna have to change, but let me just roll up my sleeves and work with you and figure out how we do this in a way that actually lives up to the values that we have, right? And if we believe every person has the right to live with dignity in our community, and that every person has value, then that means we need to make sure that everybody has a safe, warm place to lay their head at night. And if we don't do that, we have failed as a society.
Now, one of the questions we ask everybody is, what's a piece of advice that you've gotten over the years that stuck with you? I was just talking about that. I had the privilege of working for a fabulous woman when I hated politicians. And this is like over 20 years ago, right? Her name is Beverly Stein. And she told me, every person has value.
And as my staff person, it is your job to figure out how to connect them to where they're passionate, right? What is their passion? Figure out what their passion is and connect them to that. That was my job in her office, right? I never, ever, ever forgot that. I have done community programs where I had a team of 100 people, registered over 65,000 voters in 2000, right? All over the state of Oregon. My people, alcohol and drug treatment programs, food lines, soup kitchens, that was my team. People were like, what? You doing what? Who? Right? Right? Because they were valued. They worked their butt off, right? I had people who didn't even know they could vote. Because in Oregon, no one loses their right to vote when they go to prison. They can register the day they get out, right? Of course, most politicians don't know that. And certainly people who've been in prison didn't know that, right?
And those people, politicians aren't telling them to vote.
No, right, they're not telling them that they have the right to vote, right? But every time I say it to a politician, they go, really? It's like, it's always been the law in Oregon, right? So that's one of the things that has really framed my public life, right? It's really about, where's the connection? What is it, how do I connect this person to people that are sharing that same value, that same dream, right? Because they can help.
There we go.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being with us tonight. She's going to stay on stage because the commissioner's going to stay with us, and my foot went to sleep. And Jennifer's going to stay with us as well for Q&A. We do this thing at the end, so after the questions, we do this thing called Everybody's a VIP, so we don't have a VIP meet and greet because we think everybody's a VIP. So we'll all be outside, everybody on stage will be out in the foyer right after the Q&A to meet anybody, to talk to anybody. The commissioner's going to stay, Jennifer's going to stay, everybody's going to be here because we'd love to meet as many people as possible. We're going to go to questions now. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Please ask a question. We like speeches. Give us a speech afterwards in the hallway. And here we go. You right here.
Here's the mic. It's right behind you.
I couldn't see them. Oh, Justine. Justine, everybody. It makes the podcast happen. I love you.
It's a 2020 question. I want to know what you guys are going to say to people once the 2020 race gets narrowed. So whether you're someone who is a Bernie bro, and we know that about 25% of Bernie bros didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in the general, even though they voted in the primary. But whether you're for Bernie, you're for Biden, you really want to see Kamala eviscerate Trump in a debate, whatever it is, what you guys are going to say when it's someone's last pick that gets up. Sorry, that gets up there.
Brittany's like, good question.
We still got a couple of months to figure this out. So, a lot of months.
I think the conversation we failed to have in 2016 was a conversation about harm reduction, which is not sexy, right? That is not the big dream, the vision that I think to which we all aspire. And frankly, our job right now is to be having the big vision conversation, but whomever ends up in that last slot and makes their way into the general, at the very least, people need to have an intimate understanding of the nuances of harm reduction. Because we just did not have a conversation, I think, across the board about that in 2016, which led people to saying things like, it doesn't really matter who's president, or the person who's president won't actually affect me. And now we look at this budget that came out yesterday, and farmers are mad at Trump because he's getting rid of farming subsidies, right? So suddenly this idea that we don't at the very least need to reduce the amount of harm that can befall us because of who the executive is, like we need to make sure that people at the very least understand that. Even if I can't sell you on the dream of the man or woman who ends up in that spot, at the very least, I know that you not only don't want to go through another 4 years of this, but you don't want it to get even worse than what it is now. And that's not a sexy conversation, but at the very least, it's an honest one.
I hope that more people understand that it's not just about the one person, and that it's about all of the decisions they make, all of the appointments, the Supreme Court justices, all of the lower court justices, all of the stuff that presidents do that's less sexy, that's sort of less newsworthy, that people aren't paying attention to. Those things often matter more than things that we are paying attention to. And if Trump wins another 4 years,
I'm moving.
the court is done. I mean, we don't even have the Supreme Court. Like, we might need to just pack the entire court with like 9 more justices at that point, because like that's like 20 years of a conservative lock on the court, and that is worse than you know any other thing. Well, I'm not even gonna say that, but a lot of other things that could happen. And so I think part of it will be encouraging people, even if they're not excited about the particular candidate, to understand all of those other ways in which they'll be impacted, like you said, Brittany. And I think for me, the court is one of those really important things.
And I'll say, time out for 1 second, some logistics on the stage. Can you two switch so we can share the mic?
Yes.
You and the commissioners. So the thing, we got a lot of pushback during the election because we supported Hillary when she was the nominee, and we worked with both campaigns with Bernie and Hillary quietly behind the scenes to help them. People called us sellouts. They told us we didn't know what we were doing. Like, wow, we got a lot of flack for that. And not that we were right, but we were right, because we believe him and he's crazy and like whatever. But I think that what we'll probably do is what we did before is like work with, when it gets narrow, work with their teams to make sure the messaging is right. I think that like the criminal justice stuff, I think everybody's gonna agree on. I really do. I think that that's gonna be the wash this year. That like, it was hard in 2016. I think people are gonna agree. I think what people are gonna disagree about is what you do with billionaires. What's the role of wealth? I think that that question is gonna be all over the place. And then what is our role in the world? I think that question is gonna be all over the place. But I think what we all learned from 2016 is that people will not just vote to vote against somebody. I think that was our big lesson. People want something to vote for, and I think that all of us will work really hard to give people something to vote for, even if we're like, nah, I really don't. But like, Trump just can't win. Like, that's just that's like a non-starter for people. I do think, I remember we were sitting in meetings and people were like, me and Brittany went with Hillary in Cleveland, like right before, and it was bad. I mean, people called us everything but a child of God. And people were like, the president doesn't do anything. Why are you doing all this stuff? The president doesn't matter. Everything is local. And we were like, no, we think the president matters. They're like, y'all are sellouts, da-da-da. And now those same people, like their friends are getting deported. We're like, we told you the president matters. You're like, not even like to put it in your face, but like we tried to tell you. I think that people get that message much more now than they did in 2016. The question is, will they vote? Remember, 63 million people voted during the midterms. Only 63 million voted for Trump during the midterms. I mean, voted for the Democrats. During the midterms, only 60 voted for him total. The numbers are actually on our side. The question for us is like, can we organize people?
Woo! I would just add that it's also a question of we have a majority of folks who are not represented by a party. They don't believe the Democratic Party or the Republican Party represents their values, their perspective, right? The question is, how do we keep them motivated until there is a candidate that then they can get behind, right? Because I think that's really, for me, that's the big problem. Because the Democratic Party definitely doesn't represent my perspective at all, right? And that's just the reality. They don't, because they put their money consistently into these teeny tiny little demographic groups. So whether it's soccer moms or NASCAR dads or whatever it is that's never ever gonna vote for them anyway, right? They spend a small fortune. And then they call the one black person they know and say, turn your friends out to volunteer, right? That is not acceptable anymore.
Hi, my name is Laura. We talk about...
Where you at, Justine? Where you at?
We're in the back.
Oh,
Hi. My name is Laura. We talk a lot about the dignity of everyone. Commissioner Hardesty, I'm so glad I voted for you, first of all. So thank you for all of your hard work. But one of the things that's really important to me is voter rights. And one of the groups that we leave out are homeless folks. And in Oregon, I'm very proud to be a voter by mail. But this disenfranchises in Portland, at least 4,000 voters in Multnomah County.
That's not true. That's
It's
actually
not true?
No, that's absolutely not true. So if you are houseless If you're connected to a social service organization, if you have a SSI check, if you, even if you're just camping, right? There are folks that will go and make sure that you're registered. There are folks that will make sure you get your ballot. You can even get your ballot if you're in the county jail, right? What I think what you're referencing is people's lack of knowledge about the power of houseless people to exercise their vote.
I appreciate that. I was told that the only place that they could go was the Multnomah County Election Office.
No, that's certainly not true. I know because I remember I told you about that voting registration program that I did. I can tell you because I've done it. I know that houseless people can vote. You don't have to have an address. All you have to do is say, you know, I go to Human Solutions once a week because they provide me services. They will mail you a ballot to Human Solutions, and they will make sure that it gets turned in. So yes, no, you can do that.
So I also work in the nonprofit sector, and a lot of times it can be very thankless work. You know, I really appreciate what you guys do. You guys give me inspiration. But just, you know, what is some, I guess, advice for, you know, somebody who feels like they constantly bang their head against the wall, trying to work with City Hall and make things happen, you know. So what could you say to, you know, really keep that fire lit?
It is the most frustrating thing trying to turn an institution like City Hall any which way, right? So I acknowledge that it is very frustrating. Even for me, it is frustrating most days. My advice to you is to find allies who share your desire, to change whatever it is you want to change, right? Don't take it all on yourself. It's absolutely necessary that you build a team around you, right? So that other people can step up and step back. But it's important that there's people echoing the same message. I would also look for allies within City Hall. There are a lot of really, really smart people who work at City Hall who absolutely want vital change to happen, but they don't feel they have power to make it happen. But they can certainly point you in the right direction and connect you with the people that can help make that happen.
Okay. When you're frustrated with City Hall, you can always come to Salem. We are less frustrating at times, sometimes more, but often less. But I would say that don't forget your other elected officials. In that, if you're frustrated with something that's happening at City Hall and you're one of my constituents and you send me an email or you give me a call, I will pick up the phone and call a commissioner or call the mayor on your behalf. So use the other people who represent you if you, as part of that team of allies, because you can often magnify your message or get it to the top of the inbox faster if you think about the other folks in your universe that are here to serve you and support you.
I used to be the chief of human capital in the school system in Baltimore with 11,000 kids, 11,000 staff members, 80,000 kids, 160 buildings. And I'll never forget, so I managed a team of 50 people who did all the adult stuff, everything to do with adults. And I also was in charge of hiring all staff in all discipline. And the first day of school, because we have a ton of schools, my first day of school, this parent emails the superintendent. She's like, my kindergartner is in a class with 40 kids. That's her email to the superintendent. Superintendent emails me, she's like, Deray, can you do anything about this? And mind you, there's a principal of the school, assistant principal, one of my staff members has the school. Like, there are many ways that this could have gotten to me, but like, didn't come through that person, came through this random parent she emails. And because of her email, I like found a new teacher, like who was just coming off leave. I like found money because the school couldn't afford it. The next day we split the classes up into two, literally because of this one random email. This parent to this day probably has no clue that her email is the only reason why we did it. It's the only reason how I knew, and like it was the only impetus for the change. And systems actually aren't designed to give you that feedback. Like the system's not designed for you to believe that that one voicemail really mattered, or that one email really changed the staff member's mind, or that one sort of push. But you push anyway, and like people ask us, you know, I hate when people say we're doing the work now to set it up for the next generation. It's like, I want to believe that we can fight and win in this generation, right? And the only way we do that is by fighting. If you think about the tax code, they rewrote the tax code in the middle of the night on scrap paper, didn't even read it. The biggest change in the tax code in a generation. Don't tell us we have to wait a generation. Sometimes what we don't do is we don't make the big asks because we're so used to asking for what we've always gotten, and we need to make the biggest asks that we can.
What do you think needs to be done about climate change so there's like a planet in 12 years?
Well, I can tell you that I am so proud that Portland, Oregon is going to be a leader in green energy because of the Portland Clean Energy Fund initiative. And for those who don't know what it is, the communities of color developed a ballot measure to tax big retail operations with $1 million of $500,000 sales in the city of Portland, $1 billion sales nationally, so that we could create a pool that was intentional about centering people of color and low-income people so that they would be trained for new green jobs that would lead to family wage employment opportunities, right? I just found out that we thought it was gonna bring in somewhere around $35–40 million annually. In fact, it's gonna bring in right around $80 to $100 million annually. And what's unique, first in the country, is that NAACP, Native American Youth and Adult Association, Verde, which works with the Latino population, who am I missing? Apano, Asia Pacific Islander Network of Oregon, 350 PDX, and Sierra Club were the team that made that happen in Portland. That we got 67% of the vote. So now that I'm at City Hall, I'm like, you're gonna implement this like the people intended. Can you imagine 80 to 100 million new dollars a year? People will be trying to get their grubby little hands on it, right? But I will be throwing my tiny 100-pound body over that to make sure that that does not happen. So I am very, very excited. And we're gonna need people to actually apply because it's about getting people through apprenticeship programs, right? We do a good job of getting people into pre-apprenticeship programs, but there's no incentive to get them out the other side. So if childcare is the issue, childcare is covered, right? You need transportation, transportation is covered, right? This is how we get people into good living jobs for the future. Not the ones that have passed, but future jobs. We can't see, just
We're here. I have a quick question for JoAnn Hardesty. Also a huge thank you about the interactions with CEIC and Right to Survive. I was in those meetings with CEIC where we were told as advocates and outreach workers in the community that we didn't have a right to speak. We didn't have a right to bring in houseless folks to share their voices. So I want to thank you for your hard work. And my quick question is wondering about how that happened. We were told that CEIC had passed whatever it was going to do, and we didn't hear anything else. So I want to know how Right to Survive met with you and brought in CEIC.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I was told the same thing, that this is like already a done deal. They've got the votes, it's just going to pass. And I was like, don't think so. So I had a meeting already scheduled with the board of CEIC, Central East Side Industrial Council. I try not to use acronyms. You know how many acronyms at City Hall? It makes you batty, right? It makes me batty. And I asked them directly, well, have you sat down and met with the houseless community? Would you be willing to meet with Right to Survive? I stepped out of the meeting with them and called Ibram Mubarak and said, Ibram, I've got CEIC in my office. Are you willing to meet with them tomorrow? And he said yes, right? And so I went back in and said, CEIC, they can meet at 1. Can you be here at 1? They said yes, right? It took me just asking the question and putting them on the spot, quite frankly, right? You want to do this right? We can do this right. And we did. that's what it took. It took an inside advocate, right, that was willing to say, I don't believe this is done. It can't be done if the community is not represented in it, right? And it was wonderful to have a Right to Survive and CEIC testifying together at the city council where we passed this resolution. That was pretty phenomenal.
Thank you, Ray. Can I circle back on the climate question? I want to make a shout out to Renew Oregon, who I believe is in the house, and they are the advocates that have brought the climate bill to the state capitol. So it would create a carbon market, and those dollars would be reinvested into green jobs in low-income communities across the state. And I want to make sure that folks know that you should find Renew, you should connect with them. If you care about this issue, come to Salem. I'm committed to getting it done this session, but we need everybody to advocate for it. House Bill 2020.
I'm gonna put Brittany on the spot. Brittany, I didn't prep you for this, so I'm gonna give you a little lead into it so you can get your mind right. Is in this moment, there are a lot of people who have been working a lot and they've been in the streets, they've been at the meetings, they've done all the things they were supposed to do, and the outcomes haven't changed in the way that they thought they were gonna change. They are trying to figure out like how to maintain hope in this moment. They're looking for advice and guidance and wisdom about like what to do next in the work. What you got?
That's not small at all.
You can stand up. I see you getting ready to say. Girl, give it to us all. Give it to us.
I want to know that. What do I have? So two things. One is that I believe in hope. I also believe in urgency. And I saw a video of a young woman who's a climate activist. And she was like, all of these adults keep trying to tell us that like they need to give us hope, that we need more hope. She said, I don't need your hope, I need you to panic. And there's a fierce urgency of now that I think we sometimes let go of because we've been doing the work for so long, because we keep putting our hand to the plow and not actually seeing the results that we want to see. We have to remember the scope of time over which we got into the mess that we're in now, right? So we have to have reasonable expectations for ourselves that we're not going to get out of racism, oppression, systemic injustice in a day, a week, a month, or a year. But recognize that there are folks who have had to do far more with far less, right? That there are indigenous ancestors that had to do far more with far less. That there were enslaved ancestors that had to do far more with far less. That there were folks who ensured that we could actually be in the place that we are now. And didn't give up because they had that sense of urgency, because they knew not only do I have to do the work for tomorrow, but I have to do the work for today. So the first thing is like, yes, to have hope, but to stay urgent, to stay a little panicked, to stay on the edge of your seat at all times. The other thing is something actually that my mother always told me. She always told me that you can show people better than you can tell them. And, you know, she would tell me that in the context of a lot of things. She would tell me that in the context of school. She would tell me that in the context of relationships and men I had no business being with. Remember, Stephanie? She would tell me that in relationship to a lot of things, but I think sometimes we are so busy, and, you know, there's a bit of irony here because we spend a lot of time talking about things, but we can be so busy listening to ourselves talk instead of actually realizing that we have the power to go and build the world that we want to see. And we can actually just show people better than we can tell them. So we can show folks what it looks like to actually engage communities in a way that doesn't ask them to put a rubber stamp on a bad plan. We can actually show folks what it looks like to do climate change right because we figured out how to do it in our family and then in our neighborhood and then in our zip code and then in our city, right? We can actually figure out how to show people and create the things that will require them to recognize that there is proof sitting right in front of them and they can either get on board or get bowled over. That's what I got.
The only thing that I say as we end is people often ask us, what are we doing to reach across the aisle? And what we always tell people is that we preach to the choir, we honor the idea that we preach to the choir. Because if any of you have ever been in the choir, you know that being in the choir is hard work. There's nothing about being in the choir that's easy. That in the choir you learn how to use your voice as one person to do something with other people that you didn't know that you could do before. And being in the choir, we often think about that as the same work as being an organizer. What the best conductor does is the conductor knows that you already had a voice before they met you. where the best teacher knows that you had the gift before we walked into the classroom, and what the organizer knows that you had that spark and that fire way before we met you. And we want to help you find that spark and that fire long after we're gone. What the worst organizers do, what the worst teachers do, is make you believe that gift only exists in their presence. We want to make sure that we are always preaching to the choir, because we know the choir needs new music. The choir needs to learn how to turn that mumble into a melody, that hum into a hymn. That the choir needs to learn how to do the most beautiful and magical singing that is possible. We're honored to be in the choir with you tonight. We'll see you next time.